Let's tackle the fire district first. So I'm going to start with Stacy, if you'd like to start.
I can, but I feel like you have had more conversations in this than I have. I can speak a little bit to it. I feel like we're getting, depending on who you talk to, whether it's a board member or a staff member in the fire district, that we get different levels of concern, and I think that that's important. The safety of our community is definitely. What's wrong? I think we're good. So. The safety of our community is definitely important, and at the same time, the fire district has they also have to work from their end to do the proper modifications that they need to make to be successful and feel staffed, and then it's up to our community also to support that process. There was recently a measure to raise money, and I believe that we did support that in Arcata, but the whole district didn't support it, and that's why it got voted down. But our community also has to be part of this discussion. We have very limited power on how to help the fire district. We definitely need to partner with them. I know we are partnering with Cal Poly and the fire department on a study. I'm very curious to see what that study says. I think that will give us some great goals to work for. And I know that there's concern about passing this a couple months ahead of getting that and starting those plans. But the general plan can also be amended, and we don't have things waiting in the wings to just go up. So I think that's the best that I can kind of summarize on my side.
I might be able to add just quickly, in terms of the standard of coverage study that is being completed. I mean, first, the document of your general plan is what will set sort of the build-out design and standards. All of our public safety is going to need to be going through planning process. Our police department, EMS, fire, and as we build out this general plan, we'll be building out those services in addition to utilities, transit, transportation. I mean, all of those systems will have to be built out. And they're going to use this plan as the basis to build out support in those planning processes for them. I will say, I think the city has made considerable effort to maintain kind of an operational working relationship with the fire district, as we should. It's both responsibility of both sides. And I think at that staff level and operationally, we communicate and we partner really well. I would also say I believe the city has really stepped up to support them in this future planning. We provided all the technical assistance in terms of the bidding and the administration of the contract to do the standard of coverage. We will continue to provide that support because certainly public safety and the build-out is important in our community. But that study is also going to depend on what this general plan looks like as they finalize the details of that study. So, I mean, it can often feel like a cart before the horse or the horse before the cart, depending, was it the chicken or the egg that comes first? We've had this conversation a lot in the general plan process. Do we wait until we do every sea level rise study? But we will continue to do sea level rise studies for the next 50 years in this community, right? So at some point, you have a document that you want to start to that planning. To me, what's most important is that we have historic and we have contemporary 4-story buildings throughout this community. We currently today have a 7-story residential structure being constructed, and I believe the other tower is 5 stories in that development. So it does seem, I don't want to say a little late, but it does feel a little late to say that we're all good? Okay. It seems a little challenging to say that we can't support structure fires at 4 stories or higher than 3 stories right now. I think our conversations at the staffing level are how do we roll up our sleeves and really do the planning process that you need right now, because these structures are in our community and we need that plan. So I think that planning is going to continue. I think it'll ramp up. I think it's dependent on this plan. And I think that, that conversation has just wiggled in weird ways that I guess I just haven't understood, because I think we will all continue to partner as we have for the last 50 years in coming up with ways to support fire locally here in Arcata.
And I will add that, we are a rural community and we depend on our other fire departments for mutual aid, right? And so we all work together. And, I had conversations with Chief McDonald and Mr. Loudenslager a couple months ago where I thought that, we had everything like ironed out and we were copacetic. And then I just met with Mr. Loudenslager again on Friday, this Friday, and I felt like we had a really good conversation. And, some of the things that, we talked about moving forward was, the need that this plan was going to, be accepted, but continuing to have that conversation, whether it be a subcommittee with, some people from the fire department and some people from council, or, just continuing the conversation and really like developing that relationship and continuing to talk to each other. And, I know that just adding some additional language that the fire marshal might want to give us to put in the general plan that really has those enhanced measures like wider stairwells or more exits, fireproofing. And I know that we're kind of waiting for them to give us the language as to what that would look like. And yeah,
I see a question on that. Isn't our building department currently working with the fire marshal on code?
Yeah, we've had a conversation with the fire marshal and fire chief and the building official, and the 3 measures were kind of common sense measures that came up. I think we want to make sure that that's something that the board really approves of as incorporating into the plan. And so I think we are in sort of the discussion as to how do we best incorporate those. If the council wants to, we can go ahead and add them in. What we had discussed was incorporating those in in the zoning ordinance. And so if the council wants to move forward with that, we certainly can. They're not currently in there, but that's what's been discussed as reasonable means for addressing some of the concerns about evacuating buildings and slowing down the the pace of fire if a building does catch on fire.
What were the 3 things that you mentioned? Because when I see people on Nextdoor or so forth, I tell them that, and they're all worried about fire and what's going to happen. I tell them that we're involved in a study that we're paying for, and that we're going to get a draft at the end of the summer or the beginning of the fall. And from that draft, we can see what the outcomes are and what the suggestions are, and then we can move forward on implementing them or figuring out how to do it. And so that's the way I have been addressing the issue. And I'm excited about finding out what the outcome is going to be, because how can we judge the outcome when we don't even know what it is from the consultants? And I feel in some ways that there is worry or concern, and maybe individuals don't understand, as you just mentioned, about the study, Karen, that we are in the process of this, and we are not just going along nilly-willy, just making our decisions without taking anything into consideration. And I think bringing the 3 organizations together to actually do a study is really a good way for us to be going, and it shows that we're all on the same page and that we understand there are issues.
Yeah, and I just want to add, like, what I really think it comes down to, and you were kind of, alluding to this, Meredith, but this issue is bigger than the Gateway Plan. It's bigger than the general plan. It's bigger than what Arcata is doing. And like Meredith was saying, I think, really what needs to happen is, the start of collaboration between the city, the fire district, and Cal Poly is great, and working on the standards of coverage and all that. But really, I think it needs to go beyond that into the county level, because the fire district, also overlaps both the third and the fifth county district, right? Steve Madrone's district and Mike Wilson's district, as well as the city of Arcata, right? Blue Lake, all the way up to Neeland and down and around. And so it's really, more than Arcata. And I really do think that there does need to be, whether it's a subcommittee or a group brought together that includes, council members, county supervisors, folks from Cal Poly, staff, fire department, right, to really figure out, because I think, what we're going to see when we get this draft of the standards of coverage is that we're already behind. They already can't serve our community, because that has always been a problem in Humboldt County for police services, for fire services, for medical services. We don't have enough, especially in rural areas, and that's why there's so much reliance on these volunteer fire departments and these rural fire stations, because those are the people that are picking up the slack when, we're voting down tax measures to be able to fund our services. Not we, Arcata, but looking at you, McKinleyville. But, really, no, look, if you look at the voter data, that's what it shows. It's not, I'm, look at you, right? And so we are constrained because we are the ones that want to grow, and we want to be able to grow with our fire department, but, we can't because we're tied to funding from other areas of the county that might not see that. And so, Karen enlightened me and gave me a little crash course the other day on just, Humboldt Bay Fire and how that's evolved with taking over Eureka's city fire department, and that, to being able to pool our resources and work with other, folks in the county is really what we're going to need to do. And I think that all of us, staff and council included, has really shown a great effort of good faith. I think all of us have met with fire department staff and board members. Karen has come to all of those meetings. David is in conversation with the fire marshal and with the fire department. We're doing it all the time, and I think we've shown that effort. And I think that actually just shows how stretched thin the fire department is, because we're not seeing much from that except for this study going on. And I like Meredith said, I feel like we were at a good place with that conversation, felt really comfortable, and then all of a sudden there's a letter that comes out, or there's an article in the Outpost, or there's an interview, right? And then it's wait, I thought we already did that. And so, I think two-prong, seeing that, yeah, we need to obviously pass our general plan, because that's going to create the standard for which the fire department can plan for, and that the fire marshal has to sign off on every building. And so if we're building something and they say, no more, then they can say no more, and that will sit there and not get built, right? And so I think that we need to approach it from a way in which we move forward and we study what we need to study, and we work with the fire department hand in hand. But we also, again, so many issues in Arcata and so many issues in Humboldt County, need to take that bigger view and look at it from the county point of view, and partner with Humboldt Bay Fire, our county supervisors, Cal Poly, all these institutions that have a big seat at this table. And so that's where I think we need to go with this. So, yeah.
Thank you. Am I ready? Okay. I guess my takeaway was that all is not well with the Arcata Fire Protection District. And as pointed out by Sarah, we've all met with, the fire district, the board president, Chief Justin McDonald. And I just want to read you a letter that we got just a couple days ago.
We've read it.
But the community hasn't necessarily seen it, because it came to just us, and I think it's important that they hear that. So basically, they just said the Arcata Fire District understands that there's a public hearing on the General Plan 2020-45, Gateway Area Plan and Form Code, and the final DER will be held on the 29th. We also understand that a vote to approve and adopt these elements is planned. We're writing to request that the approval of these elements be denied at this time and put on hold until the standard of coverage for the Arcata Fire Protection District is completed, and that the Arcata City Council and the Board of Directors for the Arcata Fire District achieve consensus on a plan for the likely expansion of the district's capacity. The standard of cover with the city and the district are collaborating on is due to be completed within a few months. The recommendations in the standard of cover should clarify the scope of the required expansions of station staffing, equipment, training necessary for these districts to respond to emergencies with the anticipated growth in Arcata. These recommendations should inform the implementation of the General Plan 2045, the Gateway Area Plan, and the Gateway Form Code. And that's signed by both the board president, Eric Laudenslager, and then Justin McDonald, the fire chief. So, we were hearing a lot of things from everywhere. And the fact is that they are not comfortable, and they have asked for some protective language at the very least. Embedded in that prevents the start of these buildings until we have the ability to protect them. We must address the concerns of our Arcata Fire District. And I know that right now everybody's cringing because we want to get these things through, and I'm just going to repeat what I heard from them verbatim. Slow down the approval of the Gateway Area Plan and Form Code. What is the hurry? What is a couple more months? Everything will be ready. The recommendation should clarify the scope of required expansions of the stations and staffing. And these recommendations should inform the Gateway Area Plan and Form Code. People talk about the cart before the horse, and we want to build, but we also want to be on the right side of history. We want to make sure that not only we protect the occupants, but we want to protect those who are firefighters. We want them to come home. So I'm saying that maybe we put in some language to make sure that we have a plan when we move forward, and that we do collaborate more with our fire district. And, we spent $30,000 on this standard, or whatever the amount was, correct me if I'm wrong, close to that, on the standard of coverage. And those who may not be familiar with the standard of coverage, it's really important. It helps, it's an analysis of the community fire protection risk, projected growth and land use alternatives within the community. It's an interpretation of the impact of the community growth and development trends on fire protection risks and emergency service planning. So when I hear from our chief and I hear from the board president, put some protective language, or slow it down for a couple months and let's get that in there. It is a living document. If we need to go back and change it, we can, but we can't change if something bad happens as a result of us moving forward before they're ready to be able to protect those buildings.
But the fire marshal still signs off on all buildings. So let's pass a plan and get a plan that works.
I just want to say that that letter again, came after I had the same conversation with Eric, and it was fine. So I don't understand why these letters keep coming out of left field after things that we have already discussed. I'm fine with putting in measures for protective sprinklers and how making sure that these,
Well, they're required.
right, exactly.
You have to have sprinklers. You have to meet all these codes.
Mayor, if I could, because I think that this is actually going to help. I think it's important for you to understand that passing anything, even going back to some maybe our previous conversations, everything is being done at the program level. You can't build anything off of that. To build something, you have to get to the project level, right? And we're not at the project level. So we're at the macro level. We're kind of like saying what we want, but to actually build something, you have to get down to the project level. And I think that that's the area where you want these protections that are really in, because you want the ability to basically say, if the protections aren't in place and we think that we're going to put human lives at risk, then we're not doing it, right? And you will certainly be at project level by the time that this study is done and be figured out. So to just provide a little bit of the ability to kind of step back and not worry about any action that you would be taking, putting human lives in danger. We're at this level, you can't do that because it doesn't analyze, it doesn't let you build anything.
Well,
So I just wanted to give you that when we get to project level, that's probably where you would.
And project level, it takes quite a while. And so if we pass everything, this plan, and then people think about it, if you have to go through the city process, and if you find a piece of property and you do all your designing before the shovel ever hits the dirt, you're out 3 years, at least 3 years. And by then, we should know whether or not the fire district is going to become a district with other fire departments like Manila, Samoa, etc.
I am fine with moving forward from this topic.
Yeah, and the fire marshal signed off on Cal Poly's 7-story project. They signed off on Sorrel Place. They signed off on Plaza Point. And,
Because it
you
met all
know,
the codes.
if they couldn't
have
serve it,
to.
then why, are they signing off on these projects?
Could I ask a quick question just about what they signed off on? And I might be misinformed, but I was told that there was a water pump built within that building because of safety measures. Is that correct? So it's going to be different. I mean, another developer is not going to be able to afford or do that, but they put in particular safety measures because they have their students in there.
They did build to a very high standard. That being said, what I will say is if we have a plan and the building structure comports to the city's planning documents and the state fire code, I think the fire marshal will always sign off, will feel compelled to always sign off on that. That being said, I think the reality is we do have these structures that are already in our town, that are being built in our town. So it's just time to roll up our sleeves and do that planning. There are a lot of unique ways that we can meet some of that fire protection. I think the fire district, honestly, I think they're on board to do that planning. I think that Councilmember Schaefer said it back. They are very, very slim in terms of their resources, but we will continue to provide that extra support to get that planning done. And by the time you are looking at your zoning ordinance that that supports your general plan, I think you will have more answers in front of you from that study.
And I just want to reiterate, I am not interpreting. I read verbatim what the fire district, both the chief and our board president said. So this isn't coming from me.
Sat right across from him and had a conversation with him that
Right.
was different.
I think we've only, 8 years? We've been working on this general plan, or is it only 7? Whatever, 7, 8 years, maybe 6. It's a long time, and to have to hold it up any longer, I just don't agree. I think we need to move forward, and within the time frame, as you say, the zoning, et cetera, we will find out what's happening with the fire department. We're going to find out we're going to have to create a district, be involved in that and work on that. With a bigger district, maybe we have a district for the whole Humboldt Bay, and it's one fire department that covers everyone. And that you just have, like right now, our fire department has a downtown station, one out by Mad River Hospital and one in McKinleyville. So it may be that we have a fire district and they have all these different areas, and that may be what we need to do, is really look big and not look small.
Well, I think when I met with the mayor and Eric from the fire district on Friday, one of the things that really came through to me was it was just a level of frustration in general with, and you can pop in if I'm misrepresenting something, with the limitations that they have to raise money and the increasing expectations, and it's more of a top-down issue and some reform within the system that really needs to take place. And I feel like conversations like this, if we work together, can help elevate that, because I heard a lot of frustrations, and a lot of the things that were being said in that meeting weren't things that we could control from here. And even it just, there was a lot of frustration that was beyond our capacity here, and with the way that the system is set up in place, and I think primarily their ability to raise funds for what they need. And I think that's a much larger conversation. And I think what Councilmember Schaefer, I think you spoke very eloquently on what perhaps needs to happen to help that.
They operate on a parcel tax. So if you had subdivisions throughout our community, it would be well for them. It would work really well, because they would pick up parcel tax on each one of them. But we don't want to be in our green spaces and out in the bottoms and,
All right.
and creating subdivisions all over. We want to go up and protect that.
Let's take an informal kind of vote if we want to, if we've talked about this enough and we want to move forward. I'm good with moving forward.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, David added the main thing that is the common thread that all of us want to see is to add these building code measures to our zoning ordinance to make sure that those protections are in code. So when things are built on that project level, like Doug was saying, right, like this is the big idea. We can pass this plan and still nothing's going to get built, right? And so we need to have a strong code that's going to make sure that these protections are in place. And I know maybe staff could add some additional information, but that is being worked on, right? And conversations have been going back and forth, so.
I've said all that I have to say. I think that this will be an ongoing discussion issue within the community at large.
And I agree with that. Does that mean we have some kind of a motion that we want to move forward, or what are we doing?
We're not making a motion. We're just kind of getting a consensus of where we are so we can move on to the next topic.
And I concur. I think that further conversation, I would like to see that code, and in 3 months we'll know more. And as pointed out by our attorney, it is project-based. So, but I just want to reiterate that I was asked to present this, so I did.
By the fire department?
By the district.
Okay. So let's move on to, let's just move down to inclusionary zoning. Who wants to start?